You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, Side Notes Edition. This is our Rogue One Redux. I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver.
And today, we're going to be discussing a great many things, all Star Wars related, because the stars aligned, the Star Wars aligned on this particular episode, and not only has the second season of Andor just concluded, which brought a lot of people to revisit Rogue One. It is also a coincidence that my first appearance, more or less, on this podcast was in 2017, doing Rogue One in May 2017. So we were recording this early June, almost to the day, more or less. Yeah, just worked out really nicely. So we're going to be talking about Andor, and then we are going to both revisit Rogue One, the movie, and our episode on it, back from 2017.
Which was, re-listening to it, come a long way, as Scott said.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a cold right now, and I might sound a little rough, and I sound 100 times better than we sound on that episode.
Yeah, audio quality has definitely had a big upgrade for us since then. And it like the vibe is so much different from those episodes where it really just feels like just a bunch of random pals sitting around a mic and just hitting record, and whatever comes out, that's what you produce. There's no real structure to the episodes. So yeah, we've learned how, I think, to put together an actual show. I don't know, maybe some listeners will disagree, but I think we have.
Yeah. I actually don't. I'd love to tell you it was deliberate, but just somewhere along the way, I came up with cuts, keeps, punch ups, and tweaks. And then I'm like, oh, we'll say this at the beginning every time. But I don't know when that happened. I couldn't tell you where that began. Certainly wasn't on that Rogue One episode.
Well, I think it's because Colin used to introduce every show slightly differently. Like he would ad lib the premise of the show based on whatever the movie was. And then I think you kind of like worked it out eventually to just simplifying it to that simple catchphrase that works very well.
Yeah. Though I did like that Colin did a great job with the cold open pitch of like, hey, I got an idea for you. Hey, that sounds great. But also it sucks in this way. I have some notes. That's been there since day one, and I love it. So yeah. Thank you for that, Colin, because that's one of my favorite little comedy writing prompts of the week.
Yeah, I will say it was nice hearing Colin again.
Yeah.
We don't hear enough of that guy anymore. It's a whole different podcast now compared to what it was back then. And
it's a whole different Star Wars universe as well.
Yeah.
Even within the time that Disney has controlled it, it's a very different Star Wars fan world. So for this episode, we are going to spend the first half here talking about Andor, our thoughts on Andor. It is a great series, but we have some notes, and just what we like about Andor, and some great listener comments. And then on the second half of the episode, we are going to both revisit the movie and the notes we gave for it now that we've got Andor in the rearview mirror. So.
And basically find out if Andor has recontextualized Rogue One for us in any particular way.
But yeah, start us off. What did you guys think of Andor, both season 1 and season 2?
I didn't actually watch the first season of Andor when it came out. I slept on it. I'd heard good things. I'd heard people say it was a fantastic bit of Star Wars. And then this year, it obviously season 2 had started coming out and Star Wars Day came. And I was like, I feel like we should watch something Star Wars-y for Star Wars Day. So I talked Anita into giving Andor a try because I was like, I've been told it's a political thriller. You like a good thriller. You like things that are a little heisty. And like the second arc of the first season is a heist and the third arc is a prison break. Two things that Nita absolutely loves. So she was on board 3 episodes in and we binged basically the whole thing, both seasons in the span of about 2 weeks. We were lucky enough that it timed out that we caught up just as the last few episodes dropped. So we kind of got to see the end around the same time everyone else did. Fantastic. Great series. They just absolutely hit it out of the park again and again and again. With the casting, with the direction, with the writing. It is sad that we'll probably never get another bit of Star Wars media this good. Which Disney has actually gone on record saying is probably going to be the case. It's great.
Oh, really? That's a weird thing.
Weird
this we've peaked, I guess. This is it.
They kind of all but said that. Let's turn it around. Yeah. But partly because Andor started production around COVID times. And that was when Disney started changing the way that it was producing shows for streaming. And the kind of budget and time and care that was set aside to make Andor just isn't done anymore because they're more interested in just churning out cheap content. And that's legit. Grim. And so that's why we're probably never going to get another Andor, which is unfortunate. But I mean, prove me wrong, Disney. I would love to eat this delicious crow, Disney. Prove me wrong.
Amanda had pretty much watched no Star Wars anything, other than, the original trilogy as a kid and maybe some of the movies, but not even all of them, again, when we were kids. So we watch Andor and she goes, wow, the first season. She's like, wow, that was great. Is all Star Wars like this? And I had to be like stifle a laugh. Like, no, by a country mile, no. The next two best things are like some of the original trilogy movies and maybe The Mandalorian. And it's still like 10 notches down.
I was watching some, other talking heads. I'm interested in what some of the other people are saying about stuff like this. And there were some people who were talking about, you could say that Andor is actually 8 Star Wars movies because the way it was released in chunks, the way that the arcs work, we just basically got 8 excellent Star Wars movies. And there was someone who was saying that if you look at it through that lens, there's a serious conversation to be had that season 2's arc, episodes 7, 8, and 9 are the best Star Wars movie. Like, better than Empire, better than A New Hope. And I was like, I'm not sure that I entirely disagree with that. Like, I'm willing to have that conversation.
I loved it as it came out. I obviously think it's very good. But then I watched, and this would have been a couple years ago. Again, I'm just talking season 1.
Yep.
A YouTuber that goes by Just Right has an excellent breakdown of why Andor season 1 is such a good examination of fascism's machinations. That I highly recommend you check it out. I'll share it in the Discord. Maybe it'll go in the show notes, but look up Just Right, their video on Andor, because it gave me a whole new appreciation. I watch a lot of, media talking about other media.
We do that, so of course we take another people doing it. Yeah.
But it was probably one of the most, of all that kind of stuff that I watch, the most profound re-examination it gave me for a piece of media. Like, I loved Andor season 1 even more after that video because he does a great job breaking it down. Highly recommend. So, and then season 2 was good. Season 2 was pretty good. This is my theory. Not theory, but like, I gotta call it a theory. The first season of Andor is that perfect examination of fascism, and the second season fixes Rogue One. The second season is basically everything that was missing from Rogue One. They get a chance to like kind of shove it in over. There's a lot missing from Rogue One. 12 episodes, it would turn out.
Three full movies, yeah. Or 4 full movies, yeah.
But yeah, the Andor season 1 is perfect, and Andor season 2 is a great way to make Rogue One palatable.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot in season 2 that I like better than season 1. Season 1 is very, very good though. And like just the whole series is good. The low points are still miles ahead of like the high points of some of the other Star Wars media that we've seen in recent years. The pace is good. I kind of like the 3-episode arcs. Especially because the original plan, as I understand it, was to do like 5 seasons, but the showrunner, Tony Gilroy, didn't want to devote another 10 years to it.
Yeah.
And so he truncated the last several seasons down into just season 2. And that's why you get the big time skips. Those arcs would have had a little more time to cook over the course of several seasons, and I get it. I'm a little disappointed, but at the same time, I'm very happy with what we got. So I'm not that disappointed.
If it had gone 5 seasons, I have to imagine that by that time, Diego Luna and company would have started to look quite old.
Yeah.
Compared to what they look like in Rogue One. And not that was, I think, a
consideration. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be a consideration. You could just be like, whatever, that's just how it is. But at the same time, yeah, they
kind of squeezed it all in to a 10-year span, and everyone passes for themselves.
You also have to think, like, if it had run 5 seasons, at some point they might have run out of gas. And they were cooking through these 2 seasons. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes a show should just end because the story's done and it doesn't need to go any longer. And there's almost a certain nobility in today's day and age for a showrunner to be like, you know what? We're done. This is it. This is the end of the story. That's all we needed.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, a lot of shows that go on too long don't already have an established ending sitting at the end of a hyperbolic curve that, like, you can fill out the infinite space between, Andor and Rogue One, but eventually you're going to catch up to Rogue One. And, The Simpsons doesn't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, that's the easy fix for that is just don't lead us right up to Rogue One. But you do in season 2, like literally he goes on the mission at the beginning of Rogue One at the end. So there's no really getting around that. There's no wiggle room.
No, but I was saying in like the shows that go on too long and run out of gas also don't have a destination. So it's kind of hard to run out of gas when you have a destination.
Yeah.
I was thinking of shows that had a very limited series run. Arcane comes to mind, which is quite excellent. And again, like Andor does not overstay its welcome. It's got its story it's going to tell, and it completes everything quite nicely. Especially when it's serialized, it feels like that endpoint needs to be a very discussed about point for the writers, because it can go bad on you, especially if you're the writers of Game of Thrones, for example.
We're lost.
Yeah. You can get into the weeds very quickly.
But yeah, Andor. Okay, here's something I did like about season 2 of Andor. That was if I had one complaint about season 1, it's that there wasn't enough weird aliens, not just in speaking roles, but in the background. And in Andor season 2, there are much more weird aliens in the background to make it feel Star Warsy. I wish some of them had lines. Like, I really wish like one of the rebels was a Twi'lek, or a whatever Greedo is.
Rodian?
A Rodian, thank you.
You're talking to the guy full of Star Wars lore.
Yeah, I'm like, why can't, like, there's so many characters and they're all humans. And I'm like, I just want one Wookiee.
Well, I mean, if you take a look at the original A New Hope, you got, what, Chewbacca? and some droids, a couple Jawas. You don't have a lot of weird aliens, except in the cantina scene, which is where they have their big, like, smorgasbord. Other than that, it's all dudes in white armor and, like, white guys. And
that's fair.
So, like, I get it.
Also, hang on. I just realized this now. This is maybe a huge tangent. And maybe it just speaks to the fascism of the Empire, but I'm like, you never see any Empire Rhodians or Twi'leks or whatever. Like, why are all the Empire guys like humans?
That is indeed because Palpatine was a huge old racist, and so guys like Grand Admiral Thrawn, who is a chiss with his blue skin, are actually in the minority in the Empire. It's also why you see very few women in positions of power in the Empire. Because he was also a big old misogynist. Because fascism.
Yep. Yeah, it kind of as I asked that, I'm like, oh, I know the answer, and it's not a pragmatic behind the scenes thing. It's a fascism thing. Yeah. But speaking of women in positions of power, Daedra's probably what a great character.
Oh yeah. Her and Cyril are both fantastic characters with very interesting arcs. Sorry, I feel like I cut you off that you were going to go somewhere there.
Nope. I was just going to also keep praising Daedra. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, fantastic performances by, again, just a stellar cast. And the fact that they're two characters who don't succeed in fascism. Like, there are point of view characters in the Empire, and both of them are destroyed by it, just as handily as the Gorman people are. And that's just, it's such a, I don't even know the word I'm looking for right now. It's such a great examination of how that ideology just chews people up. The people who buy into it chews up.
Yeah. We're recording this on the day that Trump and Musk are having a little pissing contest with each other. And it's like, it comes for you all. It doesn't work. There's a reason this doesn't work, you idiots. You can't, it's unsustainable.
It's an ideology that's built on anger and hatred and
distrust and othering.
Yeah. And then
in groups and out groups.
Once one group is eliminated, there's another group to eliminate or lord power over, and that process doesn't stop. And then eventually fascism sort of eats itself. It also often succumbs to ego and obviously, like, we all know that Hitler himself he started taking control of the armies, and that's when things went real bad for the Germans, right? So eventually it all crumbles, and so will Trump and company in time.
Back to the Star War though. I was watching a thing earlier. And it was discussing Cyril in particular, how it would have been, because he's set up as Cassian's kind of like mirror image on the other side, it would have been very easy to watch Cyril rise in the Empire at the same time as Cassian is kind of rising in the rebellion, morphing, being radicalized, buying into the cause, and like rising as a leader in the rebellion, that it would have been really easy to have Cyril's arc mirror that. But instead it was very realistic because Cyril sees himself as exceptional and sees himself as someone with like a destiny and believes in the order that the Empire is promising, and he goes nowhere. Yeah. He doesn't even just go nowhere. He gets used and discarded by the Empire, because that's what the Empire does. It turns the exceptional into the disposable. And that happens again and again throughout the series, as you see the most competent people in the Empire get ground up and thrown away by it. Yeah, and like leaving idiots in charge.
If he had Carrick's job, maybe the Rogue One wouldn't have been able to steal the plans. Like, yeah. Because he's competent,
and that's just, again, that's just truth in the storytelling, right? Because that's the way that ideology functions. That's the way Palpatine's empire works. Exceptional individuals get used by people in higher positions, and like Krennic and Tarkin, and then discarded as soon as they're not useful anymore. Yep. Even Krennic gets used and discarded the second he's not useful anymore. Yeah. And I doubt Emperor Palpatine shed too many tears over Tarkin. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, tying this into the Rogue One thing, I say in the episode that we did on Rogue One, so many years ago, that Saw Gerrera's best character. He's great in season 1, but he's even better here. Finding out that he's that thing, like in Rogue One, he's just huffing his weird mask and you don't know what's in it. And then to find out that he's basically like huffing gasoline that like walks right up to the line of killing you and rotting your brain. And now he's hooked on it. And
he's been huffing jet fuel, basically. And
he talks like this.
And he basically straight up admits like he's a crazy person. And, I realize, and this might be stepping into talking about our fixes from the previous episode, we all were like, there should have been more Saw Gerrera. There should have been an arc where Saw Gerrera rejoins the rebellion. And now I'm like, no, there was no way he could get back to the rebellion. He was so far gone that he was convinced that they were against him. He was hyper paranoid, delusional, crazy, like on like out of his mind on jet fuel, and like absolutely self-destructively opposed to the Empire. He was going to burn out real quick by Jedha. And the fact that he dies in Rogue One now makes much more sense, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I said it earlier, season 1, perfect. Season 2 is everything I wanted out of Rogue One. And that's in the episode we talk about how there should have been a heist movie. We get lots of great heists in Andor. I want more Saw Gerrera. We get all the Saw Gerrera I need to the point where I'm like, yes, now he should die. Like it's,
Yeah. And much like Luthen, I think there's a sense that Saw Gerrera understood that he's not going to live in the world that he's working towards. Right. And even when it gets to Rogue One, he's decided that he's not going to run anymore, and that's the end of that.
Jedha was very much his last stand. I think that was in his brain at that point. Like, this is where I'm going to die fighting the Empire.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think that dovetails nicely into Cassian's arc in season 2, who, he's wrestling with wanting to have some sense of a normal life. He's hoping that him and Bix can, enjoy their life together as much as it can be while they're fighting against the Empire. And he, in some ways, he's having to accept that, like, that's not his lot in life, and having to deal with the fact that, like, he's probably not going to see that day. And it's also sort of almost, he wants it so badly that he's actually forced into it, by Bix and others around him.
I kind of like that Bix makes the hard choice that as much as she wants to be with Cassian, she recognizes that the cause needs him more, and she steps away. And I mean, it's partly because, as we find out at the end, spoilers, she's pregnant and she needs to go somewhere safe for a while. But the fact that she's willing to, like, step away from him and let him do the work that needs to be done so that their child can maybe grow up in a better world is beautiful and heartbreaking and poignant. And it's, both of them make a sacrifice there.
Yeah.
And the fact that Cassian doesn't go chasing her, he doesn't, like, beat himself up over it. He accepts that that's the choice that she's made, and that's where they're at right now, is in itself beautiful and heartbreaking. And, like, just the cause is so much bigger than the two of them, and he needs to be there to fight the fight. And she believes that. And it's, God, it's so good. It's so good.
It's so good that it's so good that it fixed. There's a line in Rogue One where the rebels are like, no, we can't go do this. And a bunch of the hardcore rebels, including Cassian, are like, well, we are going to go do this. F you guys. And Cassian, like, looks at Jyn Erso and is like, what else am I going to do? I've been fighting this fight since I was 6 years old. I've lost so much. I think he says, you're not the only one who's lost things. And in a vacuum, that line kind of means nothing because we don't know much about Cassian. But when he says that with the context of Andor, it's like a gut punch. Like you think about Bix, you think about
his mom,
all the other rebels. It literally makes Rogue One better in a way that I don't think I've ever seen a prequel that improves the original so much. And it's weird that Rogue One itself is a prequel, but that's almost moot. Like Andor is the best prequel anything ever made. It's incredible.
It recontextualizes so much of Cassian's story in that movie in such an interesting way. When we rewatched it, Nita and I really started treating Cassian as the main character. Jin just happened to, or rather, Jin happened to be our like focal point character, but Cassian was our protagonist. This time when we were watching through, and it really was an interesting like switch for him to have gone from this kind of interesting side character to being someone we were so invested in. So
jealous of Amanda because she had never seen Rogue One. We watch all of Andor. We watch all of Andor season 2, and then we immediately jump into Rogue One. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that you get to see this movie through this perspective. Cause it's like, she's like, you didn't like that when it first came out. I'm like, it's not that I didn't like it. It just was kind of meh. And I'm like, but really think about that movie if you had none of the context. Like you just meet Saw Gerrera. You just, this Cassian guy just shows up and starts wagging his finger at Jyn Erso. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I think after seeing Andor, I think it kind of makes the character of Jyn Erso work even less. Because she's, she's so seemingly superfluous to the characters that you actually care about.
Yes and no, but I think that goes back to what Scott was saying, where like, she's just our POV character. Cassian is our protagonist.
Yeah.
So in that way, I actually kind of think it does make her work better because she doesn't feel like a protagonist with nothing to do and no agency. She feels like a POV character watching this awesome character that we've already met, like very Doctor Who of like, we see things through the companion's eye, but the Doctor's the interesting one. It's got that kind of a vibe to it, I think. Like,
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you that kind of generous take on it. I couldn't get over that hump personally. Like it feels weird going from Andor, where Cassian is very much our point of view character, and then having seeing him through a third person's eyes kind of thing in Rogue One, and that I don't know, it made the rest of the flaws of the film still bubble up to the surface for me. I will say that when I was listening to our original Rogue One episode, at one point I say that I didn't feel anything when Cassian and Jyn Erso hug at the end and then get exploded. And that is different for me now, because having spent all that time with Cassian, like that moment actually has an emotional punch to it. It could have been obviously much better if we cared about Jyn Erso more, but it does recontextualize that part of it quite well.
Well, yeah, we want to discuss Rogue One, so we're going to move into the second half here, but not before we do some listener comments specifically for Andor. We had some great feedback on Blue Sky from user Chris. That just, it's great. We really want to dive into these insights because I think there's lots here. Yeah,
and they kind of run counter to some of our feelings on the show, and I think it's interesting to, interrogate that a little bit.
I'm going to do my best to read it here because, Scott, you're saying you're a little under the weather. I always hate the long ones because it's too much of my voice, but here we go. I love the idea of Andor season 2, but thought the actual writing was really kind of surprisingly weak. I would love you folks to do some punch-ups. To which Greg asks,
I asked him, was there a storyline that you felt was particularly underserved?
Chris replies, I have a whole laundry list. At the core, what was Cassian's character arc in season 2? For each story, he is mad at Luthien, but dragged back for one final mission. 4x, which is true.
Yes, but his character arc is, and I think Greg mentions this on Talking Smack, is about learning to sacrifice. And accepting that sacrifices are necessary to make this fight happen. And that includes like letting Bix go and losing more friends along the way, and being willing to go back for that one last mission 4 times is part of that. And it's partly also, I love that Luthen's catch his little passcode, I have friends everywhere, ultimately becomes his legacy in a way. Luthen did have friends everywhere in a way that he didn't even comprehend. And that's why people like Cassian and people like Val are so loyal to him, even when they're angry at him, even when they want nothing more to do with him. They're still loyal and they'll still come back time and again when he needs them. And every time Cassian comes back in the season, it's because Luthen needs him, because he's the guy, and Cassian accepts that.
Yeah. The other thing I think that coming back to Luthien and sacrifice, like Greg was saying, sacrifice, works so well. Season 1 is all about how fascism works, how fascism sucks you in, how fascism just plain sucks and all the ways it sucks, and how it works. So how fascism works. Season 2 is how rebelling against it works. What you have to give up, what you have to do, the shit you have to eat, the comforts you have to give up. And for all of us now living in the time that we live in, with a lot of challenges on the horizon, it is a really good reminder that, like, just because the comforts and conveniences we know today might go, like, we might have to give those up to preserve any kind of comfort for future generations. And that's a little harder pill to swallow than, like, yeah, look at what those assholes are doing. But it's a good reminder. It's a very sobering reminder that we might have to pull a Cassian and eat shit multiple times if we want to keep the world somewhat comfortable for our children.
Josh and I talked about that quite a bit on the Talking Smack episode I was on, which please go listen to Josh's show. It was a blast being on there. We really go in depth into Andor season 2. But I think that is the thing about season 2 that it was just nice, or I don't want to say nice, but it was uplifting to see a show sort of speak to that part of where we're at in this time politically. You know, it feels like a lot of our media is maybe letting us down a little bit in terms of being able to rise to the moment and talk about what really needs to be done. You know, if we had more media speaking about the urgency of things like climate change, for, you know, if that stuff was happening 10, 20 years ago on a regular basis, you know, the world might actually be different. And it sounds silly to say that because it's just art, it's just movies and things, but like it does make a difference. It does change what's in the public consciousness, and you know, it makes everyone have to churn those uncomfortable feelings more and more. And I think at this point we do need to reckon with what it is we're willing to give up in order to you know, live a better tomorrow or pass on a better world to our kids. So yeah.
And especially considering a lot of the modern heroes, the Marvel heroes don't do that. They defend the status quo.
Yep.
Yeah. So
most of them are just like literal arms of the U.S. government, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus, like, if you're looking for a thematic through line for season 2, I mean, that's kind of there, but also remember season 2 is 4 seasons of television truncated into a single 12 episode arc. And it's broken into 4 3-episode arcs. So you kind of almost have to dig in and look at what is the arc of the first 3 episodes, the second 3 episodes, the third, the fourth, because that's where you're going to find a little more of that meat than just the whole through line, which the first season has the benefit of because it is one contiguous storyline. It still has 3-episode arcs, but it's
that too. Yeah.
But it's a little more because it's the span of one continuous year. It's things are a little more tied together in a way that things are a little more disjointed in this particular season.
Yeah.
And speaking of disjointed, Chris's comment continues, referring to the scene where they've got to get the bug out of the other art gallery. Well, it's a fun scene. It's also just a MacGuffin. The bug doesn't give them info. It's not a meditation on how they betray their allies. It's just a set piece. If Daedra had met Luthen there, that might have tied into the end, but nope.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with that because I did feel that during that scene. I was like, this was kind of a fun, little bit of, I don't know, reverse heisting tension. Yeah. But it didn't necessarily push the story forward in any meaningful way other than to, ramp up some of the tension between, Luthen and, Clea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It is more, of a character beat really for Clea and Luthen. And the final arc of the second season really is about Clea. Yep. Like she's the main character of those 3 episodes, not Cassian. He's just there. Granted, he's there to extract her from Coruscant, the very heart of the Empire, where she is currently trapped and being hunted. But even so, she's very much the main character of those 3 episodes.
Yeah, it's almost a bit of a rug pull, where you spend most of the series thinking that Luthen is the biggest driver behind the rebellion, and it turns out that the driving force was Clea, either directly or indirectly. Certainly she is the spark that brings Luthen out into trying to make a big difference and trying to make a lot of noise.
Yeah, I like how Luthen and Clea are co-equal in kind of their leadership of their rebel cell. They both bring something different to the table. And while Luthen's very much the point man and kind of like the face, the outward facing person who people are dealing with, Clea's kind of there to check him and to give him like analytical advice and to be like the less emotional, weirdly, of the two of them. And I don't know that either of them would have succeeded without the other in doing the damage that they ultimately do to the Empire.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really smart writing, and it's partly because everyone fell in love with Elizabeth Dulau. Specifically, both Tony Gilroy and Stellan Skarsgård thought she was astonishingly good, and they both wanted her to do more in the second season, so they wrote her a bigger part, basically.
Yeah,
nice.
And so that's a happy mistake that came from a girl they cast right out of theater school.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
All right. Chris continues. The Will guy is another bizarre example. Episode 1, keep that lady away from me. Episode 3, please don't tear us apart, which is like 2 days later. Second arc, Saw is crazy. And after that, he's not in Rogue One, so we need to give him a leg injury to explain why. Yeah, that is true. And same with like explaining why Bix isn't in season 2. I think they generally handled that kind of stuff pretty deftly. Even just the way they grabbed K2SO. Like it was a little bit, I'm like, you're in the middle of a battlefield and you're going to grab a detached droid and like you can't even lift yourself. It's probably full of tracking devices and take it back, but it's sort of forgivable. And just generally I found the prequel tying in this better than most prequels of any franchise. So
yeah,
even if that means writing out characters like Will.
I'll admit that I was a little also confused by Will's trajectory, because after he huffed gas with Saw, I expected that he'd be in deep with Saw's group, but then a year later he's not. I mean, that makes sense. Saw's pretty off-putting, and Willman seems like a guy with at least half decent head on his shoulders. So I just assumed that eventually he extricated himself from that and went back to the fold. But yeah, I feel like that may be one of those little plot points that's just a casualty of them having truncated things.
Could be.
Some more observation.
It seems like it could have been a lot of fun to have him, end up joining with Saw Gerrera, and and then I don't know, you could kind of kill him off, and maybe that would add some extra tension between Cassian and Gerrera when they meet in Rogue One. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Some more observations from Chris. After 24 episodes, I'm genuinely not clear if Cassian is actually good at his job or not, or does he just Forrest Gump his way through the rebellion? K2SO is used as a literal Deus Ex Machina, and we're supposed to hate Leia's dad at the end of it?
No, Cassian is very good at his job. That's why they keep him around, despite the fact that he keeps going off half-cocked. And it's why Luthen continues. He extracted Mon Mothma from the Senate after she called out Palpatine as like a fascist genocidal monster in public. And like the Senate was being locked down and literal assassins were being sent after her, and he gets her out. Like, that is not something that happens by accident because you're Forrest Gump. That comes from competence.
Yeah.
K2SO is used as literal Deus Ex Machina in one point, but K2SO is also an actual Terminator who is very good at killing people and is largely bulletproof. So, I mean,
come on, like K2SO just like chucking guys off of the bridge. That was just good fun. We were cackling our way through that scene.
Using poor Supervisor Hirt as a human shield, despite the fact that he's pretty much bulletproof. And I don't think we're supposed to hate Leia's dad at the end of it. I think Bail Organa, though, it's nice to see another side of him. Mm-hmm. Because we're used to seeing him as this like shining pillar of the rebellion through like the lens of the Clone Wars and stuff. And so it's nice to see his more political side and to see him like being a little more cautious about intel and maybe not being super happy with some of these other rebel cells that are out there not falling in line with the rebellion. Like it makes him more human, in my opinion. And I kind of liked that. And I, for the record, did not care about the recasting. I have no problem with recasting. I'd be happy if they recast Luke, Leia, and Han to do more stuff during the Galactic Civil War. As long as those actors are good and they're playing the characters, I'll buy it. Like, you don't need to use more deepfakes. I don't need any more deepfakes.
Yeah, we'll get to that. A couple more thoughts from Chris here. Does mention that I do think the time jumps mostly hurt season 2 because each arc ends in big events, but the next episode the characters have just completely moved on. That's a fair assessment. There was, you don't really get to sit in it for a while, and you kind of got to fill in how things got from where they are with the time jumps.
Yeah, and that's sorry, Greg.
I did feel like with when you jump from one time to the next, that I didn't feel the weight of the time passing as much as I felt like I could have. It really still felt like I was picking up right exactly where we had left off previously, and that there wasn't a lot of like unsaid character development going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's just how I felt about it. I don't know that it matters entirely, but yeah, it's just that it's almost like a little texture thing, that you just didn't get that, with it. I don't know. So it's strange.
Whether it's the Rebels or the Empire, you just kind of get the impression, in that year, they've just been doing the work. Like, they're building the Death Star. They're sucking Gorman dry. They're building the rebellion. They're establishing a settlement on Yavin 4. Like,
yeah,
I don't feel like you missed much.
Yeah, see with sorry, what's the little wormy guy's name again? Dedra's love interest.
Cyril Karn.
Cyril, sorry. So it does feel like that transition from Cyril working for the Empire in Coruscant, and then you see him much later on Gorman. He's got this whole new job, and he's doing it as kind of a spy or whatever. That did feel like it was a good character development, and like some unsaid stuff going on. And obviously, like when you get that great scene between Dedra, Cyril's mom, and Cyril, that it really does feel like their relationship is in a much different place, than where it was when we left off. So that's a good example of well-written time passing. It was mostly surrounding Cassian, where I felt that I just didn't really get a good sense of it.
A quick aside. Actually, I think that's the bulk of Chris's observations. So thank you, Chris, for that.
I want to mention one other thing about the time jumps, because this is something that I noted, and this is the one point where the time jump actually came and slapped me in the face, but in a good way. After the Gorman arc is done, after Dedra initiates a massacre on a planetary scale, we get a time jump to a year later. And the next time we see Dedra after that time jump, she is the same rank. She is in the same. She hasn't even been given back her pet project. She did all of that, and she sacrificed like a bit of her humanity and her love interest for the Empire on the promise of rewards, that she was getting noticed, that this was going to like do good things for her. And a year later, she's stuck in a rut. Nothing has happened for her. And the fact that when we saw her, she was the same rank just jumped out at me. And I was like, because of course, all of the work that she did for the Empire doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Because the Empire doesn't care about her the way she cares about the Empire. Yeah. And it was just a chef's kiss, little bit of like thought that went into that.
And just like Cyril, she could not let it go.
Yep.
And it ultimately destroys her. The fact that Cyril, he's sort of becoming somewhat sympathetic to the Gorman, and then he sees Cassian and he just can't get over it.
There's the outside agitator that he was looking for. There's the guy who's to blame for all of this. And like all of the doubt, all of the hesitation in his mind in that moment immediately turns into blame on the guy he hates, and he attacks him. And like,
even though it's his wife that pulled the trigger. Yeah.
And like, I did really quite love that moment where the fight stops for a second and Cassian just goes, "Who are you?"
Because it's been a one-sided obsession. Cassian maybe saw his face once in passing. Years ago. And he doesn't remember this stupid security guard who he fought, who he tied up and left in a shed. And Cyril's been obsessed with him. And it's a question that just pierces him seconds before he gets shot in the head by the guy who he betrayed so thoroughly.
Well, I think we should move into the second half here. I just want to give one more little funny observation to great about season 2. I love that when Cyril and Dedra are in a room and he's like, "We've only got an hour," and she kind of sighs and the lights go off. That's a very funny moment. But also I think it's like the next episode, we get a very tender kiss between the two rebel ladies that we do see, like the lights don't go out. And I just was like, oh, that's kind of funny that we don't like, this is fascists fuck in the dark. Like, it's just so, like, there can be no joy. There can be no love. Like, it's purely pragmatic. Like, even sex is pragmatic. Yeah. We've got an hour.
It was at least a moment where Disney didn't like wuss out with regards to like an LGBT character. It's Red Letter Media that sort of coined the phrase passive progressive, and that's how Disney does, generally speaking. They don't get to the kiss, they just imply that they're gay or whatever. So that was kind of nice that actually was followed through on.
Well, on the other side of this, we will talk about what we think about Rogue One with Andor in the rear view and compare it to what we thought about Rogue One in 2017. We'll be back.
What will you do when they catch you? What will you do if they break you? If you continue to fight? What will you become?
Welcome back to the second half of I Have Some Notes, the side notes edition of Rogue One Redux. So I think we all did. We went back and listened to our episode on Rogue One. We've also all watched Rogue One in the last week, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Mine ended up kind of being bullet points, listening to back what I said then and checking it against how I feel now. I don't know if you guys have something similar.
I'm just kind of winging it.
Can I bang out my bullet points and see if that inspires?
Go for it, yeah.
Great. So I still agree with Scott's point from the original episode. And my more specific note on it, you can cut all of Edo. It's not a good set piece. It's kind of bad. And I still think it's very silly that they have the who betrayed who meeting outside in the rain just so that Cassian can take a shot. It's still very stupid. Andor doesn't change that.
Yeah, it could have been done elsewhere and better. Edu really does just feel like an unnecessary side quest. I think that's exactly how I worded it in the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I said this in the beginning, but I'll repeat it. Now that I have gotten my Saw Gerrera fix, with Andor, I'm okay that he dies in Rogue One. It actually works.
When I was re-listening to the episode, I was like, man, we really liked Saw Gerrera and wanted more of him. And now I'm like, I 100% agree with you, Liam. I'm like, nope, this is where he needed to die. This was the correct choice.
I think I said in the episode that he just needed to make some kind of sacrifice rather than just deciding to die. I think that would have been an improvement. There's two things that kind of suck about that scene. So one is Saw Gerrera just decides that I'm going to die. And the other is that they just kind of forget about the hologram, which is like the key piece of information that they need to be able to take to the Rebel Alliance so that they can prove that this super weapon exists. And I think it would have been far more interesting if, Saw Gerrera dies either trying to make sure that Jyn Erso receives the holocron or whatever it is in Star Wars, and it would have added an extra tension to that scene if, when they are outside of Saw Gerrera's lair and they are trying to get onto the ship, that we get a moment where, maybe Jyn Erso is hanging onto the ship as they're trying to escape and they're trying to pull her up. And then that's when the message is lost. She drops it and then it just is exploded into dust.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Right.
I was even going to say it would be interesting if Saw had chased after with the message, but didn't make it in time.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just one last effort to try and be the rebel or whatever.
But more than that, like a poignant comment on like how his body has failed him at that point.
Right.
Like, he can't keep up. He can't make it to them because he's falling apart because of all of the damage he's done to himself over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. His weird hacked together robot legs and all that.
In that Rogue One episode, I did mention that I wanted it to be a heist because I'm like, well, we've already had so many big Star Wars battles. This seemed like an opportunity to be like Star Wars, but it's a heist in the same way that like Skeleton Crew movie is Star Wars, but it's the Goonies.
Mm-hmm.
And I I now no longer think that is necessary because so much of Andor is heist based.
Right.
That having a big epic battle at both the third act of Rogue One and Rogue One as the finale of Andor, I like the big battle better because I got the heist I wish I had gotten instead of a big battle when all we had was Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Aldani heist is really good, and I almost like how many of the people involved end up dead. Just because it shows very realistically, like how lethal the line of work they're in is. And it sets you up so that you know that like you're going to meet some interesting people along the way in this series. And a lot of them are going to end up dead before the end because that's the nature of their job. They're rebels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I really liked the heist. I really liked the prison break at the end of season 1. That was a really good high point. I think, the Gorman massacre is another great set piece. Like probably, I was not emotionally prepared for episode 8 of season 2. It was gut wrenching. And yeah, we got so much. We feasted so well in this series, you guys.
Very much so. Another comment that we had all made. I'm going to kind of combine 2 comments made in our Rogue One episode from 2017. Both the fact that in Rogue One, Vader shows up to just sort of have a scene with Carrick, and that episode, we're all like, that's useless and stupid, and we didn't need it. We also all bemoan the CGI Peter Cushing, and using an actor's likeness after they're dead, and that's kind of gross and icky. Watching it now with hindsight, that's cute. It's so cute that we were turned off by that. I was like, yeah, sure. Why? Cool. Vader's here. I'm into it actually. And I'm like, okay, like I don't like CGI Peter Cushing, but you know what I like even less was, CGI Harold Ramis in the Ghostbusters. And like, there have been so much more gross fan service and just dragging the either, animated corpses of dead actors or the let him retire Harrison Ford actors of like, we're going to make him play Wolverine forever. It's just, we were really hard on the Vader thing and the CGI Peter Cushing. And given how much cringy fan service is in like Solo and so many other of these legacy franchises, it's kind of quaint that we were mad about the Vader and the Peter Cushing thing.
No, you know what? We were allowed to be mad then, and I'm still mad about it now. I actually found it more cringy on this watch through, and that's maybe just because what had seemed like really decent CGI at the time, as always is the case with CGI, didn't age well, and Tarkin looks not great. Unfortunately, on the rewatch, it's what I said before, and it's what I said about Bail Organa. Don't be afraid to recast. Yeah. You've been doing it for years with James Bond. We still buy the guy as James Bond. Like, I still bought that was Bail Organa, even if he had a slightly different face. It's fine. If they're playing the character and it serves the story and the story is good, I will buy into it. You're not going to, just because Luke Skywalker looks different, doesn't mean that that's not Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. Yeah, having we've had CGI Luke Skywalker.
We have as well, yeah.
And it's awful. Stop it.
And none of these actors are bigger than the characters. Mm-hmm. Han Solo is bigger than Harrison Ford. Yeah. Princess Leia is bigger than Carrie Fisher. And they are the iconic originators of those roles, and that can never be taken away from them, nor should it. But you can have someone else slip into those shoes and play that character and do it service, and it'll still be good. And it's not going to be ruined just because Princess Leia looks a little different now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then maybe I shouldn't have combined the Vader cameo with the CGI Peter Cushing, because I think you're right. It is just as egregious now as it has ever been. Whether it's Peter Cushing or Harold Ramis, it doesn't matter. Don't do it. But the Vader thing, I guess, like when I look back at everyone being mad at a needless Vader cameo, it looks like peanuts when you think about somehow Palpatine has returned.
Yeah.
Like it just that's not even, like, or the two guys from the cantina being like, "Hey, watch out!" as Cassian's walking through.
Yeah.
That's actually adorable. I actually chuckled. I was like, "This is a fun little moment."
Yeah, there's a little bit of fun fan service in Rogue One, and there's some cringy fan service in Rogue One.
But for all the fan service and bullshit in the 8, 9, and 10, or 7, 8, 9,
Yeah.
those movies are so, especially 9.
They're just bad movies.
They're just so bad. Like, I guess maybe make it more of a holistic thing. We were pretty hard on Rogue One. We had no idea Rise of Skywalker was coming down the pipe, and with Rise of Skywalker in comparison, Rogue One is a masterpiece.
Yeah, Rogue One is pretty good compared to it. Yeah. Yeah, Vader feels a bit studio notesy, and I'm glad that they resisted the urge to put some of these big Empire villains in the series, because it would have been easy to drop in Palpatine, to drop in Vader, to drop in Tarkin. And while a couple of them are name dropped here and there, you don't see them because they're too big for what the show is about. Yeah. And topping it out at Krennic as the final boss, I feel was a good choice.
Yeah.
Because he's exactly the kind of middle manager that we should be dealing with at this level.
And also, I think even if they wanted to, they wouldn't have had to, because, and I haven't watched all of them. I haven't watched Obi-Wan or Ashoka, but I feel like a lot of that cringy bullshit shows up in some of the other less good Disney Star Wars shows. Yeah. Like I haven't seen Obi-Wan, but I got to imagine it is full of that kind of bullshit.
Oh, 100%. It's it is something. And that's something that it is maybe mediocre. There's some stuff that I like about it, but it was not a great watch overall. And it kind of made me stop watching Star Wars. It's one of the reasons why I didn't watch the first season of Andor initially, was because so much of the stuff that had come out was okay or worse than okay. And then everybody started raving about how it was excellent. And ultimately I took a chance on it, and I'm very glad I did. So sorry, we're trying to talk about Rogue One. I keep bringing it back to Andor.
That's okay. Well, it's the Redux. We can't, you now no longer can talk about Rogue One without talking about Andor.
It's true.
In a way that's really impressive, frankly. Like,
sure. Yeah.
Can I say, finished? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna. If you've got something interesting to say, I was gonna take it in a different direction. Can I say something maybe slightly controversial about Darth Vader as we're talking about him being featured in Rogue One?
Sure.
It feels like when you see Darth Vader pop up in any Star Wars show now, that he feels silly. And not necessarily because, his costume is of a 70s era that, I don't know, still looks all right. But I think because of the context in which Vader exists now, where he's the mask is on, everything from Pez dispensers to mugs to lunchboxes. There's musicals in Disneyland where he like break dances and stuff like that. Like the character feels somewhat silly at this point just because of all the weird celebration of what is essentially an SS officer, which is it's strange in its own right.
Worse,
but yeah, like it feels
an SS officer,
right? And it feels like it's just like a big speed bump every time I see him show up.
I will say this about Rogue One's use of Vader, and people often say the hallway scene is really cool, and I will not disagree with that when you take a look at it from the perspective of the rebel officers. A Star Destroyer docks with that ship. They are prepared to see a bunch of stormtroopers burst through the door and start taking pot shots at them. And instead, an evil space wizard ignites a laser sword and starts deflecting their bullets as he marches down the hallway to them. How? That is a horror movie. That is an entire horror movie right there. It is the last thing they expected, and it is exactly as terrifying as it should be when an invulnerable space wizard attacks a bunch of mooks, a bunch of dudes who are just in a hallway. Like, if Vader comes across as silly, he comes across exactly as deadly serious as he should in that hallway scene, which is from the perspective, because if we were in Star Wars, we're not Jedis. We're a bunch of regular folks, and seeing that guy in a hallway in any context, I need to change my pants now because he's an evil space wizard and he can kill me with his mind from another starship over. Like,
yeah. So actually, I love it. Came back around to the thing I was going to say a second ago. We finished watching Rogue One, and I'm like, well, I mean, we're comfy, we're here, and it's Disney Plus. Click, click, click. And I was like, Amanda, do you want to just watch the first 5 minutes of A New Hope? Because she hadn't seen it since she was a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she talked her into it basically. And yeah, going from like Rogue One is over, fire up A New Hope. It's so good. It literally just seems like they should have taken that scene and just put it at the end of Rogue One. Just cause but that's like, it even would have, I feel like would have lost some of the luster if I had to get up and change DVDs, you know, just the fact that Disney Plus lets you go right into it. It looks,
I love how it recontextualizes Princess Leia bald face lying to Vader's face on the Tantive 4 at the beginning of that movie too, because she knows that he just watched her escape with those plans, but she still has the audacity to be like, we're just a bunch of diplomats on our way somewhere, dude. Why are you intercepting us? And he's just like, I know you know that I saw you leave. Like, how dare you?
It also explains why he's like, why this terrifying space wizard is sending resources to be like, go find that empty escape pod.
Yeah.
Like why it's so important to him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that actually ties in really nicely to my last sort of callback. One of my biggest compliments of Rogue One was the aesthetics of how it looks very spacey, but still honors the 70s set design.
Yeah.
And I complimented Rogue One when we did it the first time for that. I actually complimented even harder because as slick as Andor and even the shitty, whether it's the good Disney Plus series or the shitty ones or Andor, they all have like a 2025 polish, like a real, like we've got digital cameras, we've got the weird Mandalorian Jon Favreau digital semicircle thing to work with. Whereas Rogue One looks like was shot in the 70s kind of. And it's like, I just liked the scene in Rogue One when they're at the Rebel base and you see Mon Mothma and, Leia's dad and the weird, you know, screens and shit. It looked even better. It looked even more 70s-y in a way that was really satisfying that Andor does not. I would almost say it's the one thing Rogue One has on Andor and Obi-Wan and Ashoka and Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian, yada, yada.
I will say this about Andor. I like how much they used actual, like, location shooting throughout. Like, they found interesting places that looked spacey and they dressed them up and shot there, where they could have just been doing it in front of a green screen. And the fact that the production design made the effort makes it look real and makes it look weighty in a way that, frankly, the prequel trilogy doesn't. One of my big complaints about the prequel trilogy.
Something I noted, I don't know if it was in season 1 of Andor, but I noticed it in season 2. So in the same way that anytime you see set design and technology that was established in the 70s redone here in the modern era and they keep faithful to it, they also do that with the flying cars on Coruscant. They kind of look like shitty early 2000s AI or not AI, sorry, CG.
Yep.
They have that weird sort of crappy sheen of like something that's on a green screen. And I'm like, oh, I love that. Like they've continued this aesthetic trend of like, it's going to look like the movie that it's referencing. And if that movie was made 20 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever, we're keeping it. And so, yeah, in Andor season 2, the kind of shitty CGI cars seemed like a deliberate choice that I was very there for.
I like the consistency.
Like,
yeah. Little bit of consistency of production design. They've updated it to look Empire-y instead of Republic-y, but it's still got this. It still looks like Coruscant.
And there's I've talked about it before, but there's a famous quote by Brian Eno talking about how like whatever you can. I should have pulled it up, and I forget when I brought it up last time. But like as soon as a technology advances, the aesthetics of the old one become desirable. So like VHS fuzz, record crackling. And so it's kind of neat to see that idea honored in the form of like Coruscant looks like cutting edge, but also shitty early 2000s CGI. That's what Coruscant looks like.
Yeah.
The Empire has 70s computers and Coruscant looks like a PlayStation 3 game. Like
I like that Melshi gets more backstory in the Andor series. It made him have more weight. The fact that he became Andor's like ride or die bestie, like when they go back to Coruscant to rescue Clea, Melshi doesn't know who Clea is. Melshi doesn't know. Granted, they're going back to rescue Luthen at that time. They don't know he's dead. Melshi doesn't know who this guy is, but Andor thinks it's important. Andor's going. Melshi's in. And same with K2. Like, they're just like, we're in. What are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the fact that he then does it again in Rogue One, that just sets that up, that Melshi's on. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to go and take on Scarif? I'm there. Say the word. I wish that more of the guys who went on the suicide mission with Cassian had those moments in the second season. Even just a couple more of those guys, so that we could have like, oh, there's that guy with the beard, or oh, there's that big mouth alien guy. I think that would have been cool. I get that we don't have time for all of that. I get it, but I was glad that Melshi got some more screen time, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I like that the poker scene with K2SO and Melshi and Cassian.
So
great.
Fun.
Yeah, it reminded me of some of the fun poker scenes we get in Star Trek Next Generation with Data being the robot that is trying to figure out how best to play poker. Yeah, it's great.
I just generally liked seeing more of Yavin 4. Mm-hmm. In the second season. Like, even I know that it got a lot of flack, the first arc where Cassian's trapped on Yavin with a group of rebels who have fallen to infighting. But I liked the reveal that was Yavin 4, and then you get to see kind of the rebel base being developed and the Rebel Alliance coming together, and that was just cool. That was just nice. Had no problems with that. And I think I liked seeing more of Yavin 4 in Rogue One too. I might have even said it in the episode. I don't recall. So getting even more time on Yavin was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd say overall our fixes for Rogue One, about 50-50, I think. Some still apply. Some are fixed by the very existence of Andor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. I don't think that there was anything in that episode that, I entirely disagreed with, as far as fixes go. Like, it could have been fun as a heist movie. I still wouldn't mind a little bit more Saw Gerrera if that were a way to go. But like you say, Liam, like the way with the Andor context, it isn't totally necessary. But certainly at the time, it was it made sense to me. So
I think honestly,
and I still think that Jyn Erso is largely the character that does not work, and I don't think that has changed at all. If anything, like I said earlier in the episode, it could be worse. So
yeah. I fully agree. I think Jyn is the weakest link in the movie, which is a shame. And it's this is not in any way meant as an indictment of the actress. No. I want to be very clear on that. She does excellent work with what she's got. She could have had more. She should have had more. And yeah, I think that's a character who could have used another pass to make her work a little more
Yeah, she
in
needed
what they were trying to do.
she needed to come from a different perspective. Like we don't.
I think so. Yeah.
We don't get she doesn't have an arc into the rebellion. She's just kind of like gets picked up and thrown into it, and then she's kind of a part of it. Like there's if she was, I think we mentioned this in the episode, if she was kind of more sympathetic to the Empire and has a transition, or even if her relationship with Saw Gerrera was really, really soured. And then, he kind of, his relentlessness, in the rebellion and fighting against the Empire turns her into someone who does not want to look up, as she says. She's it came for her dad. It ruined the rest of her life. And now she wants nothing to do with it. So when she gets rescued, there's like this sort of tension of like, I don't want to be rescued. Fuck off.
Yeah, I think that's actually maybe the way to go, because she did get rescued by Saw and kind of raised by him. And we now know the kind of extremist that he is. I think that the way to have played that might be that she just started to recognize that he was nuts. He was not right in his mind, and he was obsessed. He's the kind of guy who would burn down an entire village to get rid of an Imperial garrison. Yeah. And the people in the village are just an unfortunate casualty in that. And she needs to her recognizing that and getting soured on the idea of the rebellion because she sees it as violent and extreme, because her lens to the rebellion has always been through Saw.
Yeah.
And then to get introduced to the larger Rebel Alliance and realize, oh, Saw's actually on the fringe, to the point where the rest of the Rebel Alliance is like, ew, that guy. And then realizes that there are good people and that they are trying hard and that they are trying to build something up, not just tear something down. Because at the end of the day, that's all Saw is about. Saw is there. Saw just wants to burn down the Empire. There's no end goal beyond that. Whereas people like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa are looking past that point and are looking to, as Luthen would say, the sunrise that he's never going to see. They're looking towards what happens next, to what we're going to build on the ashes of the Empire. Yeah. And that could be the thing that inspires Jyn to throw in with the new rebellion. And and carry on the message of the best hotel manager in the galaxy. Rebellions are built on hope.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that character is great. In our Rogue One episode, I think it's Scott or just the collective riffing. There was a pitch made that Jyn should have to choose between her, she should hold her father and be like, don't die, and have to choose between her father and the rebellion and make the smart choice to choose the rebellion over her father. And I think that was a canny insight when we said it in 2017, but even more so if Cassian is part of the person who helps her get to that, because he gets to be like, look, we've all, you have to make sacrifice. You have to eat shit. Look at let me tell you about all the stuff I went through in season 2 of Andor. And you tell me if you think letting your Imperial dad die is worth sacrificing everything the rebellion stands for.
Well, not just that, because if he could contextualize it as your father sacrificed his life with you so that he could strike a blow at the Empire. And if you don't carry this information forward, that will have been for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that could be a wake-up call for her. Because, that's exactly what he did. And now Cassian's just saying, it's now your turn to step up and make a sacrifice.
Speaking of turns, it's our listeners' turn to get in on the conversation.
This is going to be a meaty episode. I'm looking at the recording time, and I suppose this is kind of the end of the season, though, so we can go out on a big one.
And it's all brilliant. You can't cut any of it. Cut that. Lister comments. Bogo Load says, makes the seams show more in Rogue One. In a lot of ways, I wish we had a clearer idea of what Gareth Edwards' cut would have been.
Yeah, that's fair.
Is Gareth Edwards' lack of creative agency the problem with Rogue One? I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I said this in the chat, that, you know, his strength is not, character development and emotional weight. And I can't imagine that a Gareth Edwards cut would suddenly introduce that stuff, which is so sorely lacking in Rogue One. So, I as purely as a film nerd exercise, I would absolutely love to see what he had originally envisioned. But I'm just not confident that it would fix the problems.
Yeah.
Wednesday 831 says, I like Rogue One more after Andor, and not just because of Andor. Here I kept thinking of Serenity the movie in the context of Firefly, and Rogue One is a great standalone movie in the way that Serenity is not. The weaknesses of Rogue One tend to tie back to the franchise obligations Star Wars requires of its media, and it manages to build on them, for example, giving us that terrific Vader scene. Yeah, I think I said this before we were recording that, no, I think I might have even said it during the recording now that I say that out loud. Some of the fan servicey stuff in Rogue One really does feel like studio notes. Like it feels like you need to have a scene with R2-D2 and C-3PO. You need to throw in some background characters for a fun little cameo. You need to have Darth Vader figure into the plot somehow because he's alive during this time. And the writers just being like, okay, we'll see what we can do. Yeah.
So I think I'm glad you did say it earlier, and I'm glad you repeated it because I can give me some clarity. It's provided me some clarity of thought to something I said earlier about the Vader cameo, and I'd forgotten about the R2 and C-3PO cameo. Because we have sat through 24 episodes of Andor that has no mention of Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Vader, Obi-Wan, the rest. When C-3PO and R2 show up in Rogue One, if you're watching it in the context as of the finale of Andor, I kind of was like, oh, hey, C-3PO's here. Like it felt earned because I felt like I had to wait for that. It wasn't something obligated to give me. It actually felt like a fun cameo and an Easter egg, in the context of Andor. I don't know if anyone else agrees. I might be in the minority, but I
kind of agree. It's like how, and I don't know if you all stayed through the credits on the last episode of Andor, but towards the end of the credits, the Star Wars theme song plays for the first time in all of Andor. They play the actual like Star Wars theme song. And Nita and I were like, oh, we cried. But it was because it was an earned moment.
Right.
Like it had built up to that and it felt earned. And I kind of agree in the context.
Built up is the word.
In the context of this being like the series finale now, instead of just its own standalone movie, seeing it link back to the original trilogy in that way does feel more earned. And I do agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Robin,
just a quick note here that these next two comments are in response to Wednesday's comment.
Sure. So Robin Taylor says, the Vader thing annoys me because the Vader in Rogue One is not the Vader in the original Star Wars, and these movies are supposed to play as a whole. That is fair. He's a terrifying menace in the original series, and in this, he's just sort of standing around looking at the window, and an annoying guy comes, asks for something he has no business asking for, and he tells him to fuck off, and that's it.
Has a delicious pun moment that nobody liked, and then yeah. I love his lava palace though. That's
on Mustafar.
What does he do there exactly? Like
he mostly just sits and broods in his bacta tank. I'm not joking. At this
is this
point
from Wikipedia?
At this point in the timeline, Vader's really checked out. Outside of like waking up to go and hunt the occasional rogue Jedi that his Inquisition turns up, he's just he's lost everything. He has nothing to live for. He's just the Emperor's like heavy at this point. So he spends most of his time just brooding on Mustafar and trying not to die because again, he is grievously injured.
Right. Yeah.
It's Luke Skywalker coming back onto the scene and blowing up the Death Star that reignites the Fire Invader. And also the death of basically the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Empire aboard the Death Star puts Vader in charge of the Starfleet. So he becomes much more active post Yavin, and especially because he's driven to find this Luke Skywalker guy.
The one thing that Andor and Rogue One do that completely undermines Jedi and Empire, or Empire and Jedi, is the idea that like you see these guys, like they're sucking Gorman dry, they're pillaging these Kyber crystals from a temple. There's an entire propaganda campaign disguised as an energy program. You can tell that the Empire is giving it their all to build the Death Star. And then Luke and the gang blow it up. And then in the next movie, they're like, let's build another one. Like it was already silly in the context of the 3 movies, but it's even sillier when you think about all the like sweat and tears that went into Gorman. Like for them to be like, yeah, just make another one.
make a bigger one that doesn't have the flaw that was built into the first one. So that the only way it could be destroyed is if it was blown up while it was being constructed. I actually, my pitch for the movie that I would want to make would be, about the Bothan Spynet uncovering the existence of the second Death Star and setting up Return of the Jedi. Also, because then I can put some friggin' Bothans on screen finally. Cowards, show us a Bothan.
Is the line, many Bothans died to get us this information, is that not in A New Hope?
No, that's Return of the Jedi.
Okay, that's... Yeah, I'm not that big a Star Wars guy, so I was always kind of like, even when I watched Rogue One when it came out, I'm like, I thought a lot of Bothans died to get us this information. But I guess it was Cassian guy, but it's because it's in Jedi or Empire. Okay. Aaron comments in response to Robin Taylor, who's in response to Wednesday. The Vader and Krennic scene should have been cut even without the context of the show. Krennic's a good villain, and they could have used that time showing him gloating over the destruction of Jedha or extolling the virtues of kyber crystals and calcite accessories or something to show what a bureaucratic ghoul he is.
Yeah, Krennic is the middle manager that you hate. The guy who takes all of the credit for all of the work you've done and basks in the glory of it. But at the same time, I kind of disagree with Aaron because it's nice, especially after the context of Andor, where he is the final boss, to see him suddenly run up against someone even worse than him, Tarkin. Because Tarkin is the final boss of middle managers who take credit for everyone else's work. Krennic thought he was that guy, and then, it turned out I'm not. So him running to Vader, like trying to go over Tarkin's head and being like, it's unfair that he's taking my work from me, is so satisfying at that point. Because we've seen what a dick he is. Mm-hmm. For an entire season. We get to see him do his like Nazi meeting planning the extermination of the Gormans. We get to see him just be the worst at Mon Mothma's party. Like it's nice. It's kind of nice to see him get put in his place. So I don't hate it.
I also love how many of the like previously on Andor involved that great line delivery of the one guy going, deep substrate, foliated calcite. And the internet, it's like a meme now of next comment.
Our good friend Tack always has some great insights, has some more for this. For what it's worth, my big fix is to start Jyn fully on the Empire's side and witness her change to the rebels in real time. Make her a rising star on Coruscant, but her career is threatened when her father is accused of treason. After this, we go in one of two directions. Either she searches for her father to prove he didn't defect, and when shenanigans ensue, she lies and joins the rebels to continue her search, eventually finds him dead, witnesses enough to switch sides, plans a heist to steal the plans. Or Jyn finds out her father hid a flaw in the Death Star's design, and there's evidence on Scarif that she needs to destroy before the Empire finds it. She enlists the rebels to steal it under the guise of being a turncoat, but as the plot progresses, her motives change, and the heist becomes a genuine attempt. The second is a little less Star Wars-y, but definitely more heisty, and we all like a good heist.
I do like this in practice. Like, I like the idea of this, but part of the reason I don't think you can have her be a ride or die Empire sycophant is because we see Krennic kill her mom in front of her early on. And so you'd have to cut that, which then also means you'd have to cut the concept that Galen is there under gunpoint for 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's just there's like, you'd have to unravel quite a lot of Rogue One to just have Jyn be an Empire simp.
Something that I mentioned in our original episode, by the way, is it was unclear to me if Galen Erso was the Death Star's designer or if he had just designed the super laser. Fun fact, in the ensuing years, I have learned he was indeed the man who just designed the laser and the reactor system. So there were other engineers who were involved in other parts of the Death Star. He was just the guy who specialized in power systems and turning a lightsaber into a planet killer. Because he was an expert on kyber crystals. That was his expertise.
That was one thing that made me laugh again, listening back to the episodes when we posited the idea of the fact that the Death Star hadn't reached full power yet, and then once it does, it just becomes like a space-sized lightsaber that just mows down planets when it swings around in orbit.
Well, it doesn't exactly work like that, but think about it for a second. What better thing for an absolute asshole like Palpatine to do than to take the symbolic weapon of the Jedi and turn it into a monstrous weapon of mass destruction?
Yeah.
Like, perfect.
Sounds
Beautiful
like a real
bit of
Sith
villainy.
thing to do.
Yeah. Absolute villainy.
Good thing he never comes back. Oh, wait.
No, he doesn't. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't, because those movies don't exist to me. They're dead to me. You know what? I just go back and read my old expanded universe books that exist in their own canon separate from that, and that is what's real to me. That is what exists in my brain to this day.
And then finally, Josh Scar of Talking Smack, which we do recommend go and listen to the Talking Smack episode on Andor. You'll hear lots more great insights from Greg. I haven't listened to it yet just to not taint this conversation, but
I did.
I'm eager to go.
And Greg did repeat some of the things that he said here, but
pretty hard not to.
But he definitely does bring up some other stuff there that's worth checking out. So.
Well, I like that I came to the season 2 is about sacrifice thing, independently, because apparently you guys talk about that a lot. So that made me feel clever. But speaking of clever, we got comments from Josh Scar. I don't know how much to contribute, but I wish the movie wasn't about how the flaw in the Death Star was intentional. And I'd be inclined to agree. Make the movie about acquiring the plans to reveal to the galaxy how depraved and violent the Empire is, not about filling a perceived plot hole from a movie 40 years ago. The exhaust fort plot should just be a beneficial coincidence created from Imperial hubris, not just an inside job.
And that plays back to something Luthen says in episode 2 of Andor, which is they're arrogant.
Yeah.
They're arrogant. The Empire is built on hubris. They've been sniffing their own farts for so long at this point that they think it's clean air. Them having built a giant impenetrable superweapon that had a stupid flaw in it makes perfect sense. It did not have to be an intentional thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But that's been Andor. That's been Rogue One. That's been our own. You know what? I just realized this now. We just gave notes to our own episode. I have some notes. An episode of I have some notes.
Yep, we're through the looking glass, fellas.
Speaking
about people sniffing their own farts.
Yeah. We're already three white guys around the age of 40 talking about Star Wars, and now we're talking about our own conversation of Star Wars.
But in the end, it was mostly just an excuse for us to gush about a TV series that we all very much loved and highly recommend. If you have not, if for some reason you just sat through this whole episode, but you have not watched Andor and Rogue One, go do that right now.
Sorry, we just spoiled everything for you.
I don't think it would ruin it. You know what? I don't think it would ruin it.
Okay, well, join us next week to see if we were right about Speed Racer. Now that it's been given a cultural reconsideration. No, we're going to have more great movies to notarize here in the future. But until then.
Until then, you can reach out to us on social media and let us know if you have any other reconsiderations about Rogue One that you might have thought of while you were listening to us. You can reach us at ihavesomenotes.bluesky.social, at ihavesomenotes.pod on Instagram, where I have some notes on Facebook. And of course, best place to have a conversation with us is over on Discord. We're there all the time. You can interact with all the other super intelligent people with much better ideas than us who are hanging out there. Just go check out the profile on any of our social media. You'll find a link there to the Discord server or over at ihavesomenotes.com. And lastly, please, if you have the time, go and give us a little rating on a review on your podcatcher of choice.
You can also visit patreon.com/ihavesomenotes and become an armchair screenwriter with us. For just $3 a month, you'll get access to bonus episodes, old and new, as well as a shout out on the podcast. We appreciate your support.
Yeah. And the keeps cuts, punch ups, and tweaks will continue in a couple weeks, so we'll see you then.
Until then, I'm Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I am Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies and elbows up, Canada.